Now, I welcome all the students for this session on how to face IIT JEE. And I also like to thank this opportunity to share my experiences with all of you through the Chanakya University. Okay, so now to begin with, let's get started. Now, so as you are all going to be prepared, or rather preparing yourselves for taking up the various entrance examinations in our country, well, at this juncture, probably you're going to take up three most important entrance exams. So one is the JEE Main, the other one is the JEE Advanced, and of course, state level entrance examination, which is CET as well. Now, before we get started to understand what are the various things that can be adopted to to enhance your score and to enhance your performance, but let's have a look at what is present in front of us, so that we sort of understand the focus and the competition that we have in front of us, and then let us understand the various strategies in turn. Now, let's have a look at the seat availabilities in various prestigious institutions. Now, to start with NITs, there are 31 NITs in our country, which offers about around 22,000 seats, and 26 triple ITs and 20 GFTIs. So the first three institutions, get their funds, of course, including the IITs. There are 23 IITs in our country. So all the four institutions get their fundings directly from central government. So therefore, the infrastructure is going to be very good, and even the faculties will be training the students and teaching there are highly qualified. So one has to aim to get into these prestigious institutions for the same reason. Now, as well, I mean, the other option that we have is the Karnataka CET, where you have about 150,000 seats available. And these are the seats available via the government quota. Okay. Now, what are the entrance examinations that we have through which you can get into these prestigious organizations, especially the first four? Now, to get into NITs, triple ITs, and GFTIs, you have to clear JEE Mains, and not just merely clearing JEE Mains. Rather, you should be getting a good rank in that. So the entry scheme into the first three organizations is via JEE Main, and the entry into the IITs is via JEE Advanced, and of course the entry into the local engineering colleges that is within our state is via Karnataka CET. Now you now have a look at you already know the number of seats available with us, so that you should already have set your focus. Now this is including all the general merit as well as all the other the reserved seats. Okay. Now, in order to get into in order to even avail a rank in JEE Main and the Karnataka CET, there are certain eligibility criteria. First of all, let's have a look at the eligibility criteria of JEE Main. Now, till last year, the eligibility criteria for JEE Main was that you're supposed to score 75% in your boards. But I think this year there may be a slight change in that. The NTA is planning to reduce that score to almost about 50%, and you will be informed well in advance regarding the same. And likewise, you have eligibility criteria for you to even avail a rank in KSET, which is to get about 50% in your board exams. Okay, now that's just the mere eligibility criteria. And when it comes to JEE Main, over and above eligibility criteria, we also have qualifying criteria. That is, the students are supposed to score a minimum marks. And the scheme of things that works in JEE Main is not just merely via marks, but it works via percentile. So the student scoring somewhere between 89 to 90 percentile will be able to qualify JEE Main. But that is just the last year's cutoff percentile, but then it might keep varying from year on year. Okay, now this is just the eligibility criteria and qualifying criteria. And when it comes to KSET, there is nothing called as qualifying criteria. So once you have scored 50% of marks in your boards, you will be getting a rank. Okay, now after having understood these two things, So let's have a look at, let's understand more about this percentile, because this is something which is relatively new to us. Now, what percentile means in terms of rank and score is what we need to know. Now, let's have a look at this slide here. I'll just wait here for a while so that you can have a look at it. And by the way, the total score for which you'll be tested in JEE Main will be 300. And all the 3 subjects will be tested together, which you should be, of course, aware of. Okay. Now, a person who's, of course, scoring 300 out of 300 has no worries. He or she will be getting 100 percentile. Now, well, if you ask me what would be a meaningful percentile to get into the NITs, I would say 99 percentile and above. So if your percentile is somewhere above 99, then your score is almost going to be within 10,000 or within 11,000. Now, why am I asking you all to aim at this percentile is because only then you can get into the well-known NITs. Of course, though there are 31 NITs, but then out of them, 10 NITs are very good in terms of infra. Of course, all of them are good though, but then the first 10 are very good in terms of infrastructure and in terms of campus recruitment as well. Well, some of them include NIT Trichy, NIT Varangal, and our own NIT Surathkal. And then we have Calicut, and then I have noted down a list, Roorkela, Calicut, Nagpur, and Surat, Jaipur as well. So these are some of the NITs where you should be aiming to get into. Okay. And then the other thing is, of course, you can get into these NITs, but also you might have a specific branch of your interest, isn't it? So for you to get into the specific branch of your interest along with the college of your interest, of course, your your rank should be somewhere within 3,000, and the rank should be much, even more on a better side if your branch of interest is to get into IT or computer science. Okay, so now what is the fate of those students who merely clear the JEE Main exams? Well, a mere clearing of JEE Main exams isn't going to really help you much. So let us say that you've scored about 89 to 90 percentile. Now, what is the use of it? Well, that test makes you eligible to write JEE Advanced, and it doesn't give any other benefit. Okay. Now, let us move on to a similar kind of a tabulation as far as the CET is concerned. Now, have a look at these tabulations of marks versus rank. Now, unlike your JEE Main, your CET is going to be tested out of 180, where each subject is tested individually. And as far as engineering is concerned, of course, your scores in PCM will be considered, and each subject is tested for 60 marks. And there are a lot of good colleges within our state and within our city. So if you want to get into them, of course, your rank should be, I would say, preferably 4 to 5,000. Okay. And then here are the marks tabulated. And to get into extremely good colleges like PES, BMS, and RV, EC. So of course, your scores, I'm sorry, I'll just put my phone on silent mode. Okay. So yeah, in order to get into those prestigious institutions, your score must be within 1,000, especially again, if your branch is IT. Okay. So now let's move on now. Now, after having understood the rank and the marks tab, and in case of JEE Main, we also had another additional tab, which was the percentile tab. Let's have a look at where we are now. Now, there is going to be a lot of competition when you have to face these entrance examinations. In fact, let's divide this discussion into 2 parts. One is the CET part, the other one is the JEE Main and the advanced part. Now, if you have a look at the last year's data, about 10 lakh students had applied for JEE Main, and out of 10 lakh, around 9 lakh students took up the JEE Main exams. That's a huge number. And out of 9 lakh students, or rather 10 lakh students, 9 to 10 lakh students, about 2 lakh students could clear the exam. So which means this, you see the extent of filtration there. 80% of the students have got filtered out there. So only 20% of the students were eligible in turn to write JEE Advanced. Now, out of those 2 lakh students, about 40,000 students could clear the JEE Advanced. So, which means, see the number, right from 10 lakhs, finally it got reduced to just merely about 40,000 to 41,000 for JEE Advanced. So that's the level of competition, and you'll be competing with the best of students as the competition, at the level of JEE Advanced. Okay. And KSET is nothing short of competition, in fact. So even there, you'll be competing with about 2 lakh students. And but there, the concern is not to secure a KSET seat, but then to secure a good rank and then get into the college of your interest, which is, of course, going to be, again, a challenging task. So now, after having sort of understood the level of competition that you're going to be facing, now it's time for us to understand, to reassess certain things, right? So that is where to start with, because now there are just a few more days left for your JEE main, the first attempt, the April attempt, and then immediately after that you have your board exams, and then right after board exams you have about 14 days gap, and then you have the second attempt of mains. And then you also have your CET probably in the month of June or July, not too sure, the dates have not yet come out. So now the question is where to start and how to get into the scheme of things. Now, the first thing that you need to do is, set a goal for yourself. Now, how do you set a goal for yourself? Well, first of all, you need to identify the college and the branch that you want to get in. So that's the first thing. So let me just break it down into bits and pieces for you all. Okay, so the first thing is what? The first thing is to choose a college and the branch of your interest. Okay, now this is going to be a personal choice. Now, after you have carefully assessed this based on your interest, the second thing that you need to do is you need to identify the marks that you're going to get, or that you're supposed to get in JEE main, or it could be CET, or it could be any entrance examination, and then the rank that you're supposed to get. So this is the tabulation that you're supposed to first start filling in. So once you have assessed these things, then you need to know where your status is currently. Now, of course, after you have set the goal, you need to know where you stand, right? This is the first thing. Set the goal. After this is done, you need to reassess your status or the current status. Now, how are you going to assess your current status? Well, there's a simple thing that I'm going to advise you all to do. So what I want you all to do is I want you to take up something called as self-assessment test, SAT. Okay. Now, how are you going to take the self-assessment test? Well, it depends on the kind of examination that you want to take up. Now, let's just say that if you are interested in clearing JEE main, so take up a sample paper of JEE main. Let it be a full test paper, or if it is CET, and then take a full test CET paper. Now, when you take the self-assessment test, let it be a time-bound test. Now, what do I mean by time-bound? For example, a typical CET, each subject is going to be, the duration is going to be for 1 hour. So let it be a time-bound test, because given an infinite amount of time, probably many students would be able to get many answers correct. So that should not be the case. So you need to have a similar sort of a stimulation like how you're going to get it in the actual paper. So take a time-bound test and then get the scores. So for example, if it is JEE main, it's going to be a 3-hour test, and then get the score. So once you have got the score in your self-assessment test, now feed the score in the rank predictor. Now, there are various rank predictors available in the internet. So just feed this score in the rank predictor. So once you have fed this, you'll get a rank, okay, for the marks that you have scored in this self-assessment test. Now have a look at the rank that you have got here, and have a look at the rank that you actually want to get. Okay, so now you see how close you are to the rank that you're supposed to get. Now, if the gap is very close, it means you're already on right track, so you don't have to worry. If there is a larger gap, then you need to take a stock of what all things need to be done. Okay, so that sort of puts you into scheme of things, and that's going to make you a lot more serious and a lot more committed towards what you will be doing for the next 30 days. Okay, so likewise, you can do a similar sort of an exercise for CET if you would wish to clear CET with a good score. And then again, no, likewise, you put in the rank predictor, see how far you can get there with the rank, and also see the look at the colleges for the options, I mean, for the rank that you've got. So now this is sort of going to give you an idea of how you're going to fare in your test if it were to be conducted right today. So it's very scary, right? Isn't it? So now there's no point in getting scared though, but it's good to be a lot more sensitive and a lot more sensible in reaffirming your status. So that's the only motive behind doing this exercise. Now, after having understood where to start, now the next thing that you need to do is you need to have a look at how you are going to plan up your approach. Now, to know your approach and the plan that you're supposed to do, you first of all need to know a few basic criteria. Now, one is you should be aware of the paper pattern. Now, have a look at the paper pattern. Of course, you might be already aware of it, but let's have a look at the current paper pattern. Now, there are 20 MCQs in the first section, and there are 10 integer type questions. Now, out of these 10 integer type questions, you can attempt any 5 of them. So basically, you'll be testing for what? You'll be tested for 25 questions. So 25 questions in each subject, so which means 25 into 3. So totally 75 questions. Okay. And which means you roughly have about less than 2.5 minutes if you were to see for each question, right? And I also need to tell you about the negative marks. As per the recent, the pattern announced by NTA, you not only have the negative marks for the MCQs, but you also have negative marking for the integer type, which was not there in last year. So you need to be a lot more careful in your calculations. Okay, that's one thing. And the other thing that I would also like to advise you all here is, now when you choose these 5 questions, you make sure that you choose the ones not based on your level of comfort alone, but also look at the extent of calculations that you need to do. So that also is going to play a very important role when you choose those 5 questions out of 10. Okay, now that is as far as the JEE main is concerned. And for every correct answer, you will be awarded 4 marks. For every wrong answer, there will be -1. And then if you don't attempt the question, your scores doesn't get disturbed. Okay, so that is as far as the JEE main is concerned. Now, the paper pattern as far as the Karnataka CET is concerned, you have 60 MCQs and 60 MCQs in each subject. This is in each subject. Okay, and per subject, it's going to be just 1 hour. Now you have about an hour. I think these days it's about 60 to 70 minutes or so. Now you have a different sort of a challenge when it comes to KCET. Now the challenge is you have to attempt more number of questions in an hour. So again, let's understand how that can be done eventually down the line in our presentation. Now, this is as far as the paper pattern is concerned. Now, the next thing is you should know your syllabus. Now, you can download the syllabus from the NTA website if it is JEE main. And for CET, of course, it's the same board syllabus. That is whatever you'll have done in grade 11 and grade 12. So that should be the syllabus content for your PU CET, or rather, yeah, CET. Okay. Now, what is the extent of questions and how the questions are going to be asked and from what topics? Well, to know about it, I have in fact done some sort of a compilation on a chapter to chapter in each of these 3 subjects. But before having a look at all those aspects, let me tell you that for CET, when it comes to CET, it's a different ball game altogether. Now, about 75% of questions come from what you have studied in second PUC in CET, and then about 25% of questions, roughly about 25% of questions come from grade 11. Okay, so that's how you're going to be tested in CET. But when it comes to JEE main and in JEE advanced, the split up is quite even. Okay, it's going to be about 50%, sometimes slightly more than 50% in from the chapters of grade 12, and then about 50% from grade 11. And I have also seen certain occasions where about 52 to 53% of questions coming from grade 11. So all I wanted to tell you is, when you're concentrating on JEE Main, make sure that you concentrate on both grade 11 as well as grade 12 syllabus, okay, equally. Now, this is a small bit of introduction to know your syllabus is concerned. Now, let's have a look at the split up of the questions, the probable number of questions from each of the chapters. So first of all, let's have a look at in math. Now, what I've done is I have basically compiled all the chapters from grade 11. So what you see in this slide is all the grade 11 chapters. Now, though I'm not a subject expert, my subject is chemistry. So I'll be in a much more comfortable state in discussing a lot more things about chemistry. But then this is based on some of the analysis I've compiled the questions. But this compilation is just probability, but it's not always fixed. It could change in this year, but it's just to get us a picture of how much of time needs to be spent upon each chapter of your grade 11 when you are revising it. Okay. Now, if you have a look at the first chapter listed here, coordinate geometry, well, in coordinate geometry, there are, in fact, 3 parts to it, if I'm not wrong. One is the straight lines, the other one is circle, and then the conic sections. Now, the experts say that the straight line in coordinate geometry is pretty easy. And if at all a question comes from straight lines, they feel that you should be in a position to score easily. But then concepts from circles and conic sections, which involves parabola and hyperbola, is always going to be challenging, they say. And it is going to be even time consuming, even while you study the concepts involved. And which is quite rightly the case here, where they always give you more number of questions from this chapter, so which is in fact proportional. There are some cases where you may have to spend a lot of time and then the number of questions asked is relatively less. So it's not you don't have that sort of a disadvantage as far as coordinate geometry is concerned. Now, 4 to 5 questions is quite on a higher side. Now, next is complex numbers and quadratic equation. Now, experts feel that the concepts of complex numbers is quite complex, just like the name, and you should be spending a lot of time on that. When compared to quadratic equation is relatively easy, and you have somewhere between 2 to 3 questions coming from complex numbers and quadratic equation. Okay, so still worth the time spent on the first 2 chapters. Now, when it comes to binomial theorem, you just have one question, roughly one question. I mean, it's again a variable number, as I said before. And binomial theorem, as I've spoken to some of the subject experts, they feel that this is a fairly tougher chapter where you may have to spend a lot more time on this chapter. And in case if you have not spent time initially in your grade 11, and if you're planning to study this at this stage, well, I would personally say not to do it at this point of time, with especially a second year board examinations also in the pipeline. Okay. So now next is mathematical reasoning. I think this is more logical based, and you should be in a position to get the score easily here. Next is sequence and series. Now, as far as sequence and series is concerned, again, the experts feel that questions asked here can be doable. It's not too difficult. Likewise in trigonometry, as well as in permutations and combinations. Now, permutations and combinations, again, it's logical based. If you have spent substantial amount of time in problems of permutations and combinations when you were in grade 11, then I don't think it's going to be, again, much of an issue to you. Okay, now this is as far as the grade 11 set of topics are concerned. So now, in a nutshell, if you are not too good at binomial theorem, this is not the right time to start off with it, because it's not proportional to the the time spent and the number of questions asked is not proportional enough, and it's not worth the time spent as of now. Okay, so I'll just give you all a minute so that you can have a look at it. So it's basically one each, right, from binomial theorem to PNC, and coordinate geometry should earn your respect, along with complex numbers and quadratic equation. Okay. Now, this is as far as the grade 11 set of topics are concerned. Now let's have a look at the set of topics that you're going to have in grade 12. Just give me a second. All right. Now, the first topic that I've listed here is limits, continuity, and differentiability. Now, the subject experts feel that limits is fairly a simple chapter, but on the same lines, the probability of questions being asked from limits is fairly on a lesser side. And when it comes to continuity and differentiability, I think this chapter has further two parts. One is the inverse trigonometric functions and the trigonometric equations, which is the more important part of this chapter. And normally you have about somewhere between 2 to 3 questions coming from this part of the chapter. And then you have integral calculus. Well, this is, I think, by far the most important chapter from grade 12. And when it comes to integral calculus, well, again, you should have spent substantial amount of time in this chapter. And now again, it's a challenging chapter, they say, but out of 3 to 4 questions being asked, certainly 1 or 2 of them are going to be very challenging. So anyway, it shouldn't be a matter of concern. So even if you, out of 4 questions asked, even if you were to get 2 to 3 of them right, it should certainly serve the purpose. Okay. And then next is matrices and determinants. Now, again, the analysts feel that this is fairly a relatively an easier chapter and quite easier to score. And 2 out of 2 should be your aim. And AOD, applications of derivatives. Now, this is again a fairly huge chapter, but the volume of the chapter and difficulty, the experts feel the experts feel that it is not too correlative here. But then since it's not, the questions asked from here are not going to be too tricky when compared to integral calculus. So the analysts feel that you should be in a position to score 2 out of 2 or 1 out of 1 when it comes to AOD. Now, differential equation. Now, as far as this chapter is concerned, they feel that it's very too easy and you should not be losing out on this chapter. And I also heard that, I also got to know that if someone is not able to score from this chapter, it gives us a sort of sense that the preparation levels is quite understand this. Okay. And then 3D geometry. 3D geometry is quite a huge chapter again. And as far as the questions asked from JEE Main, the analysts feel that if you have done substantial preparation in your for your grade 12, that is, if you worked out substantial number of problems, the questions aren't going to be too twisted when it comes to 3-dimensional geometry. So it should be smooth sail with regard to this. And then statistics and probability. Now, statistics is a fairly easier chapter where you should be in a position to score marks. But when it comes to probability, again, it's quite tricky. It's not too straightforward. And this topic could either be easy or difficult, again, depending upon your level of preparedness. And if one is trying to do it in a hurry, I don't think it's too positive. It's a wise idea to do probability in a very short time, because there are a lot of concepts involved here. Okay, and then vector algebra. Now again, vector algebra is a fairly large chapter in terms of volume. And then as far as the type of questions asked here, it isn't going to be too twisted rather. And if you have solved all the previous year papers of JEE Main, you should have a fair idea of how questions are going to be asked. And again, getting 2 out of 2 in vector algebra shouldn't be a challenge for you. Now, the last topic that I have here is sets, relations, and functions. Now, again, sets and relations is relatively a bigger chapter, and it is going to be time consuming. So if you have plans of doing it at this stage, I don't think it's going to be a right idea. Okay, so this is it as far as the mathematics is concerned. So in a way, what are supposed to be your high priority chapters from grade 12? So one is your integral calculus, and then matrices and determinants, and then AOD, differential equation, and then three-dimensional geometry, and then vector algebra. So these are the topics from where you can sort of get your scores easily. I mean, easy is just a relative term though. Okay. And then likewise, from grade 11, I think I've already mentioned about coordinate geometry and mathematical reasoning, sequence and series, trigonometry, and permutations and combinations. So which means even if you are not in a position to score marks in some of these areas which are too difficult, you should still be in a position to get about 16 to 18 questions correct. So 16 into 4 without, I mean, I'm just telling you, in a hypothetical situation that even if you were to get 16 questions right, 16 into 4, so it's going to be 64. So which is quite worth a try to start with in your first attempt, and you can marginally improvise in your second attempt with due practice, that is with due practice in the course of time available to you. Okay, now this is what I wanted to share with you as far as math is concerned. Now let's have a look at the split up for chemistry. Now, unlike math in chemistry, the split up is sort of quite uniform. That is, roughly you have about one question being asked or no question being asked in some of the chapters. So, well, these are the topics that I've listed from grade 11. Mole concept. Normally, a question from mole concept is going to appear in the integer type. And I just want to share a personal observation of mine when it comes to chemistry, because I teach that subject. I also closely follow the papers on a year-on-year basis, and I happen to discuss them quite often with my students. Now, the observation is that, as you know, that there are two sections, that is section A and section B. In section B, where you have integer questions, normally those questions are from physical chemistry. Okay, that is something which I have noticed in these couple of years. And then when it comes to section A, which involves the MCQs, now predominantly those questions are from organic and inorganic chemistry, but it doesn't mean that no questions at all appear in MCQs from physical chemistry. Of course, one or two may come, but predominantly it is in the numerical section. Okay, which sorts of gives you a platform when you prepare these chapters for your entrance exams. Okay, now I have got a few more list of things to discuss as far as chemistry is concerned. I hope you've had a look at these, the split up here. Now, atomic structure and periodic properties, I've just compiled the two. Again, states of matter. I mean, individually, though the chapter is the question based on states of matter is not so often asked, but then it can be asked along with the other chapters, like thermodynamics and states of matter can be combined with each other. Okay, so that's why it is 0 to 1. And thermodynamics and thermochemistry, as you know, it's a huge chapter. And one advantage of thermodynamics is that this chapter is going to be overlapping, isn't it, between physics and chemistry. The only difference is, as I know, the sign conventions are opposite in physics and chemistry. Otherwise, work done is going to be same, and then the first law of thermodynamics is going to be same. Back in physics, the questions are more concentrated and more, in fact, more complex when it comes to calculations on work done. So that should give you a dual benefit. Okay, and again, states of matter, you will be studying in KTG, isn't it? Kinetic theory of gases. Again, that's an overlapping topic, so which is going to enable you to do well in both physics and chemistry. And there has been some certain instances where questions from thermodynamics were almost similar in both physics and chemistry in the same paper. I would like to recollect, I think it was 2013 advanced paper. A question on work done was asked in physics, and a question on work done was asked in chemistry as well. Okay, and then the other challenging chapter is chemical and ionic equilibrium. So always, even though you might have had substantial amount of practice in this chapter, there's always some sort of a discomfort level, especially when it comes to ionic equilibrium. So quite a challenging chapter. Okay, and then hydrogen and S block. one question. And GOC, general organic chemistry. General organic chemistry sort of makes a foundation for your grade 12 organic chemistry. So that's again important. Hydrocarbons, one question, one or two, depends. Environmental chemistry. Now, I feel this sometimes students underrate this chapter, environmental chemistry. Now, though I've mentioned 0 to 1 based on the analysis, there were instances in JEE Main, that is, in that particular paper, I don't recollect the date and the slot in which it was conducted. No questions from thermodynamics asked, but there were 2 questions from environmental chemistry. So my personal advice is not to take this chapter lightly, because probably this was done at the fag end of your academic year, or this may have been done in the form of a presentation or seminar. But then there are a lot of data in this chapter, like, for example, drinking standards, fluoride ion in terms of ppm, the various concentrations of ion that is permissible for drinking purposes, they've been asked. And then about acid rain, they've asked. Okay, I'm just recollecting certain instances for you also that you can focus on. And about ozone layer, and then about photochemical and classical smog. So you can just, I can name them so that you can, if you're just able to focus on those questions or other concepts, you should be in a position to have a smooth sail with this. Okay. And also about the depletion of ozone layer, the gases that are present, which are responsible for the ozone layer and the corresponding reactions. Okay. So don't take environmental chemistry lightly. Okay. So in short, you cannot skip anything as far as chemistry is concerned, because the concepts are too interrelated. Thermodynamics and equilibrium is interrelated. S block is, of course, interrelated very much with some of the basic properties of, with some of the periodic properties. Chemical bonding is, again, you'll definitely have a question on the structure in one of the entrance examinations that you're going to take up. Okay, so this is from grade 11. Now let's have a look at the grade 12, the chapters as well. Solid state, sometimes questions may not appear, sometimes it may appear. So that's why I put 0 to 1. Solutions and colligative properties is again an important chapter. Questions do always appear. Chemical kinetics, will be aware of all the graphical representations. Redox reactions and electrochemistry. Now, this is a very lengthy chapter. It's a huge chapter, and equally it's important as well. Now, surface chemistry is a part of physical chemistry, but then it's a bit theory based. So which means there are a lot of, probability of questions from surface chemistry appearing in section A. Okay. Now, metallurgy is in an organic chemistry chapter. Well, memory based though, sometimes questions do appear, sometimes may not. That's why I've put 0 to 1. P block elements. Well, I have compiled the groups that you have studied in both grade 11 and grade 12 here. Group 13 and 14 you have studied in grade 11, and then 15 to 18 in grade 12. So mostly you'll have somewhere between 1 or 2 questions, sometimes even 3. Okay. Now, D and F block elements and coordination complexes. These 2 chapters are too closely related. And D and F block elements, again, you'll certainly have 1 question asked. And coordination complexes, quite an interesting chapter. It's a very small chapter. If you see the number of hours allocated, it's just less when compared to the other inorganic chemistry chapters. But mind you, it's so important that you'll always have at least 1 or 2 questions. Even in JEE advanced papers, you will have questions more frequently coming from coordination complexes. So it's worth the time spent. So the amount of time spent and the marks, it's I feel that you should be well versed with coordination compounds. Okay. Now, I have listed out all the physical and inorganic chemistry chapters and their, the split up of the probable number of questions asked. Now let's have a look at organic chemistry. Well, organic chemistry is more evenly split. Again, halogenated hydrocarbons, alcohols, phenols, ethers. You'll have mostly you'll have 1 question each. And halogenated hydrocarbons is more often combined with hydrocarbons. So you could have, even 2 questions from halogenated hydrocarbons. Now, the boss of all the chapters, aldehydes, ketones, and carboxylic acids. The chapter is huge, and so are the probability of questions asked in your JEE main. You have 2 to 3 questions asked. Okay, and then amines. Amines is, I can relate amines to coordination complexes. Amines is again a tiny chapter. It's very small, but then you are, I mean, I'm very certain that at least 1 question is going to come in your JEE main, somewhere between 1 to 2. And especially when it comes to carboxylic acids and amines, you will certainly have questions on acidic strengths and basic strengths. So do focus on those aspects. Okay, biomolecules and polymers, fairly smaller chapters. I mean, I've clubbed both the chapters. 1 question may appear from one of these 2. Again, chemistry in everyday life. This is, again, one of the underrated chapters, I would say, from the perspective of your JEE main. It's a chapter that is done at the fag end of the year, and probably the students might have lost interest in by the time this chapter is being taught, or it may have been done in the form of a PPT or in the form of a seminar. Now, I still remember in 2019 JEE main papers, and in 2020, if I'm not wrong, there was compulsorily 1 question from chemistry in everyday life, and that too in the integer section. All those questions were directed based on the structure of drugs. So if you have not yet gone through structure of drugs and the names of drugs, well, please make sure that you do it, because that is something which is a scoring area. Okay, now that is as far as the theory is concerned. And now coming to the practicals part, sometimes do questions appear from practical organic chemistry and also from salt analysis. So I have rated it somewhere between 0 to 1. Okay. Now, I was, in fact, planning to give you all more inputs with chemistry, because as I teach it, so I can give you a better idea. Now, as far as the split up is concerned, we can classify chemistry broadly into 3 branches. What are they? One is the inorganic. The other one is organic and physical chemistry. Okay. Now, it's just a personal observation that I would like to share. So almost about 35% of questions come from physical, and then about 35% of questions come from organic, which means there's an equal split, and then roughly about 30% of questions come from inorganic chemistry. Okay. Now, there's always some sort of an advantage when it comes to chemistry. Now, what is the advantage? See, in your JEE main, well, my discussion is more related to JEE main here. Now, when it comes to JEE main, you have all the 3 subjects being tested together. It means that it is left to you so as to manage this 3 hours of time which is available to you, right? And when it comes to chemistry, it is quite possible for you to complete your paper well within an hour. Okay, sometimes, you know, if you're very good at the subject, you can easily finish the paper even within 40 minutes or somewhere between 40 to 45 minutes. Okay, so that's advantage number 1. Advantage number 1 is to save time in chemistry, and you can utilize this time probably in math or physics. And I mean, normally math paper may be a bit lengthy, so students have a tendency to spend more than 1 hour on math. So to do that, you have to save some time from chemistry. And then the other advantage is it's a subject where you can score marks. Okay, which means if you spend substantial amount of time, there's a greater probability of you to score good marks in chemistry. The questions aren't going to be too tough and too difficult. So therefore, what are the steps that you need to adopt? Number 1, make sure that you are well versed with NCERT. Okay, nothing else. Make sure that you're well versed with NCERT. Read all the content from here. Now, a couple of instances I would like to share. Now, the content even in the boxes happen to be important for for the JEE main from the NCERT book. I think last year, if I'm not wrong, a question was asked with regard to who invented the idea of froth flotation process in metallurgy. Again, there's a small story on how Wasserman invented it. The question was asked on it. Nobody felt a question can be asked from that part. Again, some timelines are given in atomic structure chapter in volume 1 of NCERT. A direct question was asked based on the timelines, that is the year of discovery and corresponding timelines. So therefore, make sure, especially for chemistry, solve all the questions from the NCERT and the NCERT exemplar. That should put you in a sort of advantage. Okay, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, well, there are different sort of challenges when it comes to approaching an organic chemistry, when it comes to approaching organic and physical. Now, how do you resolve those challenges? Well, I would like to spend some time here, and then I can go ahead with the next part. Now, when it comes to inorganic, what's the challenge that you have here in inorganic chemistry? Well, there are a lot of things to remember, right? A lot of reactions to remember, and then which is memory based, not much of logics involved. So that could put you in a spot of bother. But when you approach this chapter, I mean the chapters under inorganic, now try to study the reactions in a unique way. Now, first of all, you try to identify, put your own observations. Now, see if there is any color change involved in a given reaction. So that should give you a better way of remembering things. Color change, or see if there is any gas being involved, or see if it's a redox reaction. Identify the changes in the oxidation states. That should give you a better way of remembering the reactions. And then if you are not in a position to identify anything unique, and one more thing, if it's a redox reaction, see if it's a disproportionate reaction, because normally the disproportionate reactions are important from the examination point of view. If you're not able to identify any of these things unique in a given reaction, you need to find out the applications of that particular reaction. So basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to find a peg onto which you can hold on to for a longer time. Okay, because there are so many reactions to remember, and if you are doing it in a very superficial manner, then the probability of you to forget things is a lot higher. That's number one. And number two, don't believe that in the last few days, if you just try to brush up the reactions quickly, it's going to stay at the back of your head. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It's easy to study, and it is very easy to forget as well. That's the disadvantage or problem with inorganic. Okay, now, but I've just mentioned a couple of disadvantages. But what's the advantage of inorganic chemistry? Number one, you can not have anything twisted in inorganic chemistry. So if you know the fact, you get the answer right. If you do not know it, you're going to certainly get it wrong. So it's either yes or no to your marks. There's no lines of working it out logically. Okay, that's advantage number one. No scope for twisting the questions. Advantage number two, faster to get the answers right, faster to solve these questions. So the more quick, the more good at inorganic chemistry you are, the easier it is going to be for you to finish the chemistry paper. And in turn, as I told you before, you can spend the same amount of time in physics and math. So this is what I want you to do as far as inorganic chemistry is concerned. Now, the other thing, as far as organic chemistry is concerned, I have a certain things to share with you. Now, again, in organic chemistry, make sure that you learn the mechanisms of the reactions, because questions on mechanisms are asked, and moreover, mechanisms are the peg onto which you can hold on to remove the reactions. Okay, and then the other thing is, make sure that you make a concept map. Make concept map so that in the last minute you don't have to go through each and every reaction. So make concept map for both preparation of all the compounds as well as the properties of all the functional groups. Okay, so something like this. So let's say that you want to make a concept map for preparation of alkyl halide. So put the alkyl halide at the center and then mention the various preparation methods like this, so that you don't have to brush through each and everything. This concept map is going to give you a quick summary of what has to be done over a period of time in a much shorter duration. Okay, the next thing that I want you to do is list out all the named reactions. Now, mind you, all the named reactions are important. List them out and keep studying at least one named reaction, or at least one named reaction would do for the period of these 30 days or so. You would be able to complete all of them. And then make a list of all the reagents and the role played by them in the reactions. So if you can make a clear-cut distinction of these aspects, especially concept map and then named reactions and the reactions, you should be in a position to brush through organic chemistry very quickly before the day of your examination. Be it any entrance examination, this is going to help you out. Okay, now the sort of strategy that you need to be adopting when it comes to physical chemistry is slightly different, because the scheme of things are different here. So when it comes to physical chemistry, make a list of all the important keywords in the form of it could be in the form of laws, or it could be in the form of relations or expressions, all the keywords. So identify these key areas, in the sense that if you have a look at all the keywords written on a piece of paper, the entire chapter should flow like a movie to you. So that's the importance of these keywords. And also make sure you include all the graphs, all the graphical representations, because I have seen questions asked very often from this part. In section A though, and then all the equations. So these are the things that you need to be working as far as physical chemistry is concerned, and solve as many problems, because when it comes to physical, this is what you will be tested predominantly. Solve as many problems as possible. Okay, so this is what I wanted to inform you all as far as the three key areas of chemistry is concerned, so that you are in a better position when it comes to final stages. Okay, and then with that, let's move on to the next subject. So when it comes to physics, again, like I've mentioned before, I've classified the chapters into two halves, grade 11 and grade 12. Now have a look at these topics. And now some of these topics are quite complex. I mean, complex in the sense, given the amount of time that you spend and the number of questions asked, it's not uniform. And some of these chapters could be a bit complex to be read at this stage though. If you have already spent substantial amount of time in grade 11, no harm in it. You don't have to be in a spot of bother at all. Okay. So now the questions are sort of evenly distributed as far as grade 11 is concerned. Now let's have a look at the list of questions. I mean, rather the split up, the second part of the grade 11. Now I have compiled all the high priority chapters from grade 11: kinematics, rotation motion, work, energy, power, and thermodynamics. These are high priority chapters, which means you cannot skip them. And you see almost about 8 questions appear from these 4 chapters. Again, that's just a rough number though. I've already told you the advantage that you're going to have with thermodynamics here. Okay. And then let's have a look at the grade 12 syllabus. Now, modern physics. Modern physics is again a huge chapter, but it's not way too complex. So you should be in a position to score marks. And some of the aspects of modern physics you may have studied in grade 11 in chemistry in the form of atomic structure. So you should be in a position to ace in modern physics. And then you have semiconductors, which is again, analysts say that feel that this is relatively a chapter which is easier for you to score. Electrostatics is again a huge chapter, and you have got 2 questions coming from there. Current electricity, though the chapter is on a larger scale in terms of volume, but then the questions asked is something which is doable, is what I understand. And ray optics. So ray optics is again a huge chapter. Therefore, the amount of time spent is proportional to the number of questions. And I would say that these are high impact chapters. Modern physics, semiconductors, electrostatics, current electricity. I would say that these are first priority chapters, the first four, and then these four that you're observing now. That is kinematics, rotation, motion, work, energy, power, and then thermodynamics. That should almost, I would say that you would have 50 to 60%, I mean, 50 to 60% of your questions are going to appear from these 8 chapters. So if you can work well with them, I think that would be a great strategy. Okay. And then last couple of things as far as the split up is concerned. EMI and AC, relatively a smaller chapter, a scoring chapter again. And the last two, wave optics and electromagnetic waves, moving charges and magnetism. So I hope you have set your priorities right as far as the number of questions versus the time that you're going to spend during your revision in terms of the allotment that we have discussed so far. Okay. Now, after having understood the split up and the sort of time and the priorities of these chapters in which you need to be preparing for, now the last thing is, what would be your end game strategy? Now, we have about 30 days time with us, right? Now, in these 30 days, how are you going to span up and how you're going to plan your approach is what you need to be aware of. Now, first things first. Now, you have your grade 12 exams coming up. Now, assume that if you have already scored decent marks in your pre-board examinations and if you're already comfortable with grade 12 topics, then you can safely spend about, I would say, almost about 10 days on grade 11 topics in revising them based on the priority that we have discussed or based on your comfort levels. Okay, that's the first thing. And second thing is, spend the next 10 days of time on revising and brushing through the grade 12 topics, so that it's also going to be helpful for you in your for your board exams. Now, how you're going to spend the next 10 days is what is going to matter a lot. Now, that's where our end game strategy is going to work. Now, what we need to do is, in the last, I mean to say, of course, after these 20 days time, you still have another 10 more days. I don't want to allocate all these 10 days time on your JEE preparation. Of course, the last a couple of days or so, you should be preparing for the first exam. I think for some, it may be Hindi, not too sure. It depends on the language that you have taken. Okay. So effectively about 20 days has gone for revision in a way that you would like to, based on, the split up that we have discussed. Now, the next thing is, how you're going to spend the last week is going to be very important. Now, what I want you to do is, I want you to take up mock tests. Okay. So now, what would be the source of these mock tests? That should be the first question. Now, the source is all the previous papers, all the previous year papers, all the archives. Okay. Now, I would recommend you to start with 2021. So you have so many papers from 2021 and from 2020. So start working on these 2 years. I think by the time you don't have too much of time, because you just have about 7 days. So you can first start with 2021 papers. Make sure that you finish this completely so that you get a complete picture of how the questions are going to be asked. Okay, it's almost like, a warm-up kind of an exercise before you take up the actual exam. Okay, and then the next thing is, you need to work out the sequence in which you need to give your exam. Now, because as far as JEE Main is concerned, you have all the three. There is PCM, which is going to be tested together. Now, in which order are you going to take up the examination? Well, to be very honest, there's not one particular uniform order where I always suggest you to take up with start with physics alone, or start with chemistry, or start with math. Well, that depends on, number one, your comfort level, your state of mind on the day of your examination, and also the comfort level of the questions being asked on that particular day. So whichever subject you feel should be attempted first, you can attempt it. But then before that, you can sort of experiment yourself in these mock tests. So you start with physics on a particular day, see how it spans out, start with chemistry or start with math. Okay, so that I would leave it to you. That's the first thing. And then as I told you, you can save some bit of time in chemistry, and then you can allocate that bit of time in math and physics. So this is the testing part. Of course, again, no, it has to be a time-bound test. You cannot take your own sweet time. That's one thing which you should be aware of. And the next important thing that I would like to share with you is paper analysis. It's as important as taking up tests are concerned, and it is as important as it is, revising the content is concerned. Now, when it comes to paper analysis, I would like to give you a specific flow chart in which it can be done, so that effectively you can identify your gray areas, your mistakes, and it may also help you to boost your performance. Okay. Now, I want you to do a question-wise analysis. So list out all the questions from 1 to 25 that you have attempted and do a question-wise analysis. I hope you should have time for it, because this is, as I told you, the importance of this already. Okay. Now, first of all, identify the level of questions. On a question-wise manner, identify the level of questions that you have had. And then you would have graded your paper on your own. So make a list of the questions which worked out for you, and also make a list of questions that did not work out for you. Okay. See, paper analysis is just not about finding the score that you've got, but it is actually more than that. Now, if you've gone right, now find out the reasons why you've gone right, because that is as important as in finding out the reasons that you've gone wrong. Okay. So you may have gone right because of, conceptual strength. You've been clear with the concepts, so therefore automatically that has guided you. And then next is, what if you've guessed it? Okay, if it is a calculated, guess is not something which is blind. Okay, if it is a calculated guess or an intelligent guess, again you have to categorize it. If you have guessed it, you should also write the reason on what basis you have guessed the answer, because it has turned out to be correct. And then next is whether you've got the correct answer based on eliminating the options. Because I've seen many of my students getting to the answer based on elimination. Well, that strategy is good, because that sort of gives you what you want. But somewhere down the line, you should also know the true reason for the answer that was left out. So do your own homework behind it. And then substitution method. This is more often is going to work for mathematics, if I'm not wrong. So you try to substitute the data from the options given, and then you can arrive at the right answer. So you identify the reasons for why you've got the answer right. These could be 4 majorly. Now, next is identify the reasons why you've gone wrong. That is also equally important. Now, reasons could be, number 1, again, you may have gone blank because of lack of knowing the concepts, lack of conceptual understanding. Okay, may happen sometimes. Now, when I say going wrong, it's about the attempted questions, not the ones that you have left. Okay, the ones you have left, of course, you can do again a similar sort of analysis. So that is quite understandable. You have left it because of the reasons that you know, isn't it? So I don't have to tell you why you've left it, because that's for you to find out on your own. Okay, now going wrong could be due to these reasons. Again, a wrong guess could have been the reason. Probably you might have made a silly error. Silly mistakes could always turn, dear at the end. And then also, uh, calculation mistakes. Because you're in a hurry, as the time given allotted is very less, and then you're always at the task of going from one question to another, and you might make some calculation mistakes which shouldn't happen again. So it could be due to these reasons. Now, if the reason is this, that is lack of conceptual understanding, what is the conclusion that you would draw? Should you even attempt such questions? I mean, if you have lack of conceptual understanding with regard to that particular that particular question, you shouldn't be typically attempting those questions, because you're losing marks, especially in JEE main. But I wouldn't say the same case when it comes to CET, because as far as CET is concerned, you don't have negative markings there. So you have you have your own freedom to exploit one of these cases when it comes to CET, but you have to be very careful in JEE mains. Okay, now if you've done a guess, probably again, what guess has gone wrong, you have to find out. If it is a silly error, again, you need to find out the magnitude of error that you have made. Well, you might be wondering, what do I mean by magnitude of error? Well, the thing is, sometimes when you do a mistake, I mean, the number of steps that you have reached in order to get the right answer always also matters a lot. So sometimes you may have almost gone to the answer, but you have failed to apply certain things in a specific manner. So that could have been the reason, or it could be due to lack of applicative based thinking. So those are some of the reasons that you have to be figuring out. This has to be done on a paper to paper basis. Now, once you have done all these things, the next thing is you need to track your record or track your progress. Now, how do you track your progress? Now, the best way to do is to draw a graph. Okay, a graph of marks versus the test number. Okay, so give the test number. Of course, I don't have to teach you how to plot the graph and the marks. You ensure that all the three subjects are there on the same graph, so that you have a clear understanding of it. So see how your graph grows from test on test basis. See if there is a consistent increase from a test on test basis. So if there is a consistent increase, so that means you're on the right lines, and it should sort of encourage you. But it may not be the case always. I mean, that's just an ideal situation. But what if there is a dip, something like this? Okay, and then there's a small increase, and again there's a dip. So of course it's not consistent. But then what is very important is for you to identify the reasons for this dip. So identify where you have gone wrong, identify the gray areas, and make sure that you don't repeat them. See, it's typically not like your board exams where it is one marker, this is what is going to be asked, where it is a two marker, this is what is going to be asked. So there's no clear-cut guidelines for you to choose the questions. You don't have that option. So the only thing is the conceptual awareness is what you need to be looking at. Okay. So, but then there could be another situation where you had a small drop, but then there's a huge increase like this. Again, this is also a matter of concern to you. Concern as in, it's not a negative concern, but you need to identify what went right for you, or rather, what efforts that you have taken or what strategies that you have taken has really worked out for you, which in fact can be used effectively at a later stage so that you get a consistent performance. So these are the different ways as how you're supposed to be interpreting your scores at the end of each tests. Okay, so now on this note, in fact, I've covered almost all the areas, starting from the level of competition that you're in, and then the paper patterns, and then the ranks versus the scores and the percentile, the goals that you're supposed to set, and the various, I mean, the subject-wise discussion and the chapter-wise discussion. And then also, I've mentioned that you need to be making a synopsis. Making synopsis sheets is going to be very helpful. And especially when it comes to math, I forgot to mention, make sure that you list out all the important formulas on a sheet of paper, number one. And number two, especially when it comes to math, you can solve the same problem in multiple ways. So one we claim as the classical method. The other one is the conventional method. Conventional method is a method that you use in board examinations, where you have to write each and every step, and the scores are awarded for each steps. But then you cannot use this conventional method in a JEE exams or in your CET, because you don't have much of your time. So therefore, find out the various classical methods of solving the problems in a given chapter. And then, especially when it comes to math, there are a lot of shortcut formulas. So list all the shortcut formulas, but not only that, you also need to make a mention of the conditions under which you can use those shortcut formulas. And then finally, the expressions, as I've mentioned. So those are certain things that you should be making a list of when it comes to math. And physics, well, whatever we have discussed under physical chemistry is going to be valid for physics as well. So this is what I wanted to share with all of you. I hope I've covered all the areas. So anything else that you would like to ask me, because I have come to an end of my presentation. So I'm open for QAs. Okay, so then this is it. So we'll stop here. Thank you. I thank everyone. And I also thank Chanakya University for giving me this opportunity to present my experiences with you.